भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी भाषातदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्री प्रभुपाद की जय, और की जय।
Hi, thank you. So we are witnessing Dhruva Maharaj re-entering his kingdom, where his success has been achieved. He is welcomed with great respect and celebration. Banana trunks with buds and flowers, interspersed with betel nut lines in the roads, which had arches engraved with sharks. All the doors and gates were draped with mango leaves, colored flags, and string of pearls, and next to them were water pots and lamps. In the city center were many beautiful palaces, arches, and boundary walls, which had been decorated with golden ornaments. The palace domes glittered in the sun, while gods hovered in golden airplanes above the city, bestowing blessings on Dhruva. The city squares, highways, lanes, markets, parks, and watchtowers had been cleansed, sprinkled with sandalwood water, and scattered with uncooked rice, fruits, flowers, and barley grains. The ladies sang welcoming songs, offered blessings, and showered Dhruva with auspicious articles as he rode along the highway and entered the palace. Okay. Anybody likes to read it?
Yes,
As the
Mataji.
procession of, okay.
Yeah,
Mataji,
go to the question. Yes, Mataji, what's the question? You had a question?
No.
Rajeshwari Radhika, Mataji?
No, I was just reading.
Oh, okay. Please continue.
As the procession approached Suniti Palace, Dhruva made ready to alight, but the king checked him. You will now live with me. They entered Uttanapat's palace, whose walls were studded with countless gems, and Dhruva was escorted to his opulent quarters. The king took every opportunity to pamper his son. His lifestyle was so lavish that it resembled that of the heavenly gods. The bedsteads were made of ivory and embellished with gold, and the soft bedding was as white as milk foam. All the furniture were crafted from gold, embedded in the marble walls surrounding the palace were valuable jewels depicting image of beautiful women holding shining lamps. The palace was surrounded by lush gardens filled with trees, which had been imported from the heavenly planets. In their branches were pairs of sweetly singing birds, and intoxicated bees hummed among the aromatic flowers. Small artificial lakes were dotted here and there in the ground, reached by a staircase made with valuable jewels like rubies and emeralds. Delightful garden house Houses stood by the lake where pure white swans and pinkish cranes sported. Over the coming months, Uttanapat heard about his son's exploits in the forest. Dhruva told him how he had diligently worshipped Vishnu, and the king's eyes opened wide. How wondrous! He too had worshipped him every day, praying for the boy's return. The Lord was so kind. Uttanapat saw with great delight how nicely Dhruva dealt with everyone. The prince quickly became popular with the citizen, countries, ministers, generals, and Brahmins. Dhruva matured into an exceptional young man, and Uttanapad installed him as an emperor. Both his ministers and citizens applauded this decision as Dhruva was widely loved and respected. Uttanapad then thought of his own spiritual welfare. He had reached an advanced age and wanted to concentrate on cultivating his consciousness. Detaching himself from worldly affairs, he departed from the forest to practice penance and austerity. Yay, we finished chapter 9.
Yay, chapter 9 is done. Beautiful. Hare Krishna, Rasistali Mataji, good morning. Nitya Kishori, welcome. Hare Krishna, good evening.
Hare Krishna, good morning to you too.
Rasistali Mataji, would you like to continue chapter 10?
Okay. King Dhruva fights the Yakshas. Infuriated at the Yakshas for killing his brother Dhruva, declares war on their entire race. In the years following his father's departure, Dhruva married twice. His first wife was Brahmi, Prajapati Shishukumar's daughter. From her he had two sons, Kalpa and Vatsara. Shortly after the powerful monarch, Dhruva married his second wife, Ila, the daughter of the wind god, Vayu. She bore him one son, Utkala, and one beautiful daughter. Dhruva's younger brother, Uttama, was still unmarried. One day he went on a hunting excursion in the Himalayan region where he was slain by a powerful yaksha. Hearing of her son's death, the grief-stricken Suruchi ran into the forest after him and was consumed by a fire. When Dhruva heard of
Let's pause. You think Dhruva Maharaj didn't tell Suruchi what Vishnu had told, and you think he didn't prepare her during all these years? I'm just wondering. Or maybe he did and still it can be painful. I don't know. Because this is exactly what Vishnu said will happen. So Dhruva knew still, right? Even if the astrologer tells us this will happen, when it happens, it still affects us. Okay, please continue. When Dhruva heard of...
When Dhruva heard of Uttama's death, he was overwhelmed with sorrow and anger. Without delay, he mounted his chariot, intent on defeating the Yakshas. He drove to the northern Himalayan regions. In a valley, he saw a city filled with many temples to Lord Shiva and populated by ghostly Yakshas. Dhruva surveyed the city. Surely this was Alkapuri, the Yakshas' capital. He blew his huge conch several times. The terrific sound reverberated through the valley. The Yakshas' wives trembled. Clearly, a powerful enemy was challenging their husbands to battle. The Yaksha heroes jumped up and seized their weapons. Who was bold enough to challenge them? Mounting their heavily armed chariots, they streamed out of the city and rushed toward Dhruva, releasing walls of arrows. As the screaming Yakshas came upon him, Dhruva shot arrows at a time. Those speeding shafts all found their mark and tore off the Yakshas' heads. The Yaksha warriors gazed in awe at their foe. What marvelous power and dexterity he exhibited! He would not be he would not be easy to defeat. Like serpents furious at being kicked, the Yakshas retaliated. Each soldier exhibited his valor by firing 6 arrows at a time. 130,000 Yaksha fighters poured from the city, intent on crushing Dhruva. Roaring in fury, they exhibited their full strength, attacking Dhruva with iron bludgeons, swords, tridents, pikes, spears, lances, and spiked iron balls. Beset by those missiles, Dhruva appeared like a mountain covered by torrential rainfall. He became invisible beneath the downpour of weapons.
Wow, what a sight.
The Siddhas watching from the skies cried out, Dhruva is lost. He has set like the sun in the Yaksha ocean. The Yakshas held up their weapons in exultation. Our enemy is routed. Even as the Yakshas celebrated, Dhruva's chariot emerged from the pall of weapons like the sun appearing from the mist. He burst out firing arrows in all directions. The Yakshas fell back under his onslaught, their bodies sliced and mangled. Arms and legs were strewn everywhere, heads adorned with gold earrings and jeweled turbans, their teeth clenched, rolled about the battlefield. The tormented Yakshas howled and fled like elephants fleeing from a lion. Dhruva looked around, shattered weapons and chariots littered the ground. Bloodied bodies and limbs lay everywhere. There was no sign of any surviving warriors, but Dhruva knew his foes would not give up so easily. They were masters of mysticism. Anticipating an ambush, he said to his charioteer, These yakshas are extremely tricky. Proceed cautiously toward Alakapuri. As Dhruva spoke, his heard a tremendous sound, as if the ocean was rushing towards him. A dust storm blew up, enveloping him in darkness. Rain fell in columns. Flashes of lightning lit up the black sky. An incessant shower of blood, mucus, bile, urine, pus, and stool came down. Chunks of bodies dropped from the sky, and hailstones lashed into Dhruva from all sides. A huge mountain appeared in the sky. Great slabs of stone fell by the thousands, along with razor-sharp swords and spears. Dhruva saw countless servants with glowing red eyes, vomiting fire, slithering toward him. Along with them came packs of maddened elephants, lions, and tigers. As if the time of universal dissolution had arrived, the fierce sea was foaming, waves loomed above him. Dhruva's horses reared in fright, and the charioteer panicked. Dhruva looked from side to side. What was happening? He took a deep breath. These were surely just illusions. He must not become overwhelmed like a less intelligent man. He could overcome the heinous yakshas. Inspired by Vishnu, celestial sages assembled in the sky. Dear Dhruva, may the Supreme Lord, holder of the Sharanga bow, give you all protection. May he slay your enemies. Remember that the holy name is as powerful as him. By chanting his name, one is protected even from fierce death.
Jai, Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai. Today also, Rasastali Mataji, today also we should end our meeting with japa affirmations, okay? Every day we should read one.
Okay.
Okay, any comments or questions so far? I noticed how Dhruva Maharaj's nature is back, you know. He left home because he wanted to be somebody. He didn't want to be treated like nobody. And now, even though he knew that his brother will be killed by the Yakshas, he still got furious. He's still, that Kshatriya spirit in him was awakened, and he wanted to counter attack these Yakshas. And he was so powerful that Manu had to interfere now. So this is our nature. Sometimes we have our natures to be either fighters, or we are independent personalities that we want to make our own businesses, or we want to create our own leadership circles. The point is to do it in Krishna consciousness. The point is to do it in Sattva Guna, and to not become too overwhelmed by emotion. Another thing is also, even though you see Dhruva Maharaj, who saw Krishna face to face, he still lost his temper, and now Manu has to come and interfere. So sometimes we cannot expect that somebody may be a great devotee, but doesn't mean that we have to expect them to always behave in certain ways that we think is perfect. Everybody has our own weaknesses. So we can't expect that somebody is always 100% perfect. Nobody's perfect in this world except Krishna. So sometimes we need to keep our expectations realistic about other individuals. Others may be more senior, maybe more number of years, and they may be 10 years in Krishna consciousness. They may have, they may be 20 years, they may be 50 years in Krishna consciousness. But that doesn't mean that we don't have our own natures that sometimes gets in the way. So we need to be very realistic. We need to be compassionate and understanding of these practical elements. Because in Indian culture, there is a theory that if you're more senior, you have to be more together and you should not make mistakes. And that puts a lot of pressure also on those people, whoever they are. Sometimes there's a lot of pressure on temple presidents, sometimes on the leaders, the yatra leaders, whoever. So this shows also that sometimes we get, overcome by our own nature and our own sometimes weaknesses. Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, who likes to continue reading chapter 11?
I can read, Mataji.
Please, Nitikishari.
Chapter 11, Manu intervenes. Swayambhu Manu stops Dhruva from killing the Yakshas and give him spiritual instructions. Dhruva folded his palms and bestowed his head to the celestial sages. He remembered he had an arrow given to him by Narayana. He sipped water to purify himself and then stung it on his bow. Instantly, the Yaksha's illusions vanished. The Narayana weapons emitted innumerable golden arrows, fledged with white feathers. They pierced right through the Yakshas. With hissing sounds like crowing peacocks entering a forest. The Yakshas fell back in disarray, stumbling here and there in a daze. Regroup, enraged generals ran about, pushing the Yakshas back to the fight. He is but one man. Pick up your weapon and attack. Urged on, the Yakshas raised their weapons and again rushed at Dhruva. They looked like serpents with raised hoods attacking Garuda. Dhruva stood firm. His arrow sped towards them, slicing off their limbs and heads. Slain by Dhruva, they were dispatched to the higher planets in vast numbers. The heavenly sages saw their purified souls ascending to the highest planets reserved for lifelong
Celibates, sorry.
Okay. Alarmed by what they saw, the sages reported the situation to Swayambhu Manu. Our lord, your great grandson, King Dhruva, has attacked Alkapuri and is single handedly destroying the entire Yaksha. So, I'm not able to read this word.
Race.
Okay, the race. When Manu learned the reason for Dhruva's attack, he immediately went there along with the sages. Pulling his chariot up next to Dhruva's, Manu called out, "My dear son, please stop." Dhruva lowered his bow. Manu said, "Dear child, excessive anger takes one to hell. It is one thing to punish your brother's killer, but you are killing innocent yakshas, and this is not approved by authority. It does not befit our family line, for we are supposed to know the laws of religion." Dhruva's chest heaved.
Okay, we'll pause here. See, this shows that when we have well-wishing superiors, when we are under somebody that we truly follow and believe in, they save us. Otherwise, if we are the only people and everybody's under us, then we do whatever we want and we don't have any superiors correcting us in our path, then we are lost. Sometimes we may see some devotees in power or position doing some activities that we know that it's not right or it's materialistic. And we look at them and we think, why they are not being taught a lesson? Because the right time will come, and when they are taught a lesson, it's for their own benefit. Krishna will intervene at some point or another. And in this case, Manu is correcting Dhruva. Dhruva Maharaj what he's doing is a little too much. It's overreaction. Okay, one thing is one particular yaksha killed Uttama, right? He could have just caught that person and killed. But then Dhruva is taking out his anger on everybody around. So this is very relevant for some of us. Sometimes we are angry with something or someone, and then we take it out on everybody. We may be suffering or struggling with one aspect, and then we take it out on everybody else. But Manu is saying that this excessive anger leads one to hell. You remember the gates to hell, right? Lust, anger, and greed. These are the 3 gates to hell. And as Dhruva is saying, it does not befit our family line because he is the forefather in the family line. If you remember, Dhruva Maharaj wanted a kingdom bigger than Manu, bigger than Brahma, bigger than his father. So now he is corrected by Manu that he needs to follow. And Dhruva Maharaj is not like, oh, I have all the power, I'll do whatever I want. He's not in that mood. Please continue. Dhruva's just heaved. I don't hear anything.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was speaking on mute. I'm sorry. Okay. The Yakshas had brutally killed Uttama. They deserved to die. Manu ascended Dhruva's chariot and embraced him. "My dear boy, I know you are upset by your brother's death, but you are killing thousands of innocent yakshas for fault of one. Dear Dhruva, do not act in the bodily concept of life like an animal. Animals kill one another thinking they are the body, but you know you better. So why are you unnecessarily killing others?" Dhruva lowered his eyes. "My lord, why is killing the yakshas unnecessary or animalistic? I am a warrior, a king, and it is surely my duty to fight and kill the enemy." Manu stood before Dhruva and placed a hand on each of his shoulders. It is very difficult for anyone to go back to the Lord's spiritual abode. Nevertheless, This is your guaranteed destination. Do you remember how you became recognized by the Lord? Dhruva raised his eyes to meet Manu's, but made no reply.
Hmm.
You worship. You want me to continue, Mataji?
Yeah, please.
You worship the Lord, the super soul of the universe and of every living being. As Garbhodakshai Vishnu, he is the abode of every living being. And as Karnodakshai Vishnu,
Shirodakshay
he,
Vishnu.
sorry,
Shirodakshay Vishnu.
oh, I'm so sorry. Shirodakshai Vishnu, he lives in everyone's heart. Dhruva hung his head. Manu was right. Everyone's body was a temple of Vishnu. It was therefore wrong to unnecessarily kill anyone. Manu continued, my dear boy, because you are such a great devotee, the Lord always remembers you. You therefore have a responsibility to set the right example for others. I am shocked that you are killing so many faultless yakshas. Do you forget what most satisfies the Lord? He is pleased when his devotee recognizes the spiritual quality of every living being. Narayana wants his devotees to be tolerant, merciful, and friendly. One who thus pleases the Lord is released from material bondage and attains unlimited spiritual bliss. Dhruva buried his head in his hands and wept. Manu gently stroked his head. He could understand Dhruva's heart. Although he accepted that he must desist from killing the yakshas, he was struggling to contain his grief for the loss of his brother.
Hmm.
He needed to be reminded about transcendental knowledge that would dispel his sorrow. Dhruva listened to how our material bodies are created and
Okay, we'll pause here. So sometimes we are struggling and suffering with some grief of this world that naturally affects us because we're human beings, we are ruled by certain emotions. And even though we may know philosophy, at the time when we are angry or when the time when we are sad, philosophy is not the first thing that comes to our mind. First thing that comes to mind is like how to react emotionally. Even if we've seen God face to face, like Dhruva Maharaj, still the mind and the human nature can influence us. And see, even for Dhruva Maharaj, transcendental knowledge, to be reminded of transcendental knowledge would dispel the sorrow. So that's why we do Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Every day when we take shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam, no matter what, that gives us that shelter from all these emotions, sorrow, anger, shame, guilt, disgust, envy, all these emotions, they are secondary for a devotee. It's not primary. Primary is Krishna Nitya Das, Chaitanya Das Samui, Chaitanya Das, Chaitanya Das Samui, Tar Dasera Das. So we are all servants of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the servants of his servants. So whenever something happens that crushes our ego, it affects our false ego, immediately we try to separate. Okay, this is my ego which is affected. Is my service really affected? How do I put that into the right place? And we keep our primary goal, our primary identity is we are Lord Chaitanya's servants. And anything else about my respect, my reputation, that's secondary. And so that dispels all our illusions. Oh, absolutely. Anger comes out when we are not processing our emotions properly. And when we mix things, right? Sometimes maybe somebody is trying to, let's say, disturbing our service. Sometimes it's not disturbing our service. It's just our mental thing. We think they're disturbing our service. Then maybe just disturbing our false ego. And Krishna is allowing that to happen so we can see that, hey, I'm not like some pure devotee. I also have these anarthas. And this is another reason we should be very careful to not judge others. We should be very careful because everybody has their own weakness. We should not say, oh, why they cannot behave better. Well, we are also not be able to behave perfect. So everybody has, like in Dhruva Maharaj's case, he has so many good qualities, but he had this quality of anger. In fact, that's the very quality itself took him to go and do the sacrifice and see Vishnu face to face. And that same anger is now not serving the purpose. So I always was impressed by Dhruva Maharaj's story because he's human. We can relate to him. We can relate to, sometimes it's like, oh, you got initiated, you should be perfect. You should never make mistakes. There's an expectation. Oh, you became some leader of some group and you should never make mistake. No, we're all humans. Even if you see God face to face, we'll still have some weaknesses. And it's okay as long as we follow authority, and when somebody corrects us, we correct ourselves. Okay, so I guess we will pause here for today and continue tomorrow more about how the material body is created and how the material nature determines our destiny. Poor Dhruva Maharaj, he's really hurt. He was attached to his brother. You remember when brother came, he was hiding behind the sari of the mother and they embraced, and so they have a very good relationship and he is very affected. And this is normal and natural and necessary. We need to grieve our emotions. If we don't grieve and if we suppress those emotions, then it will affect in our devotional performance. So when we are sad, we should experience sadness. Okay, we'll pause here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki